Welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's May 17th. I'm Dennis Shkradov, and I'm here with the only man that makes me tingle every morning, Kasper Ozalowski. Cass.
Well, what a compliment to start the show. And you know what? Right back at you, Dennis. We've got a big show. Some would say it's not fun size, it's not large size, it's beast size. We've got some big guests today. Dennis, why don't you tell the lovely people at home who we have on Submission Radio today?
Well, lovely people tuning in. We have two of the biggest legends in MMA on the show. We have Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man. He's going to be stopping by on the show. We have a lot to talk to Ken about. Obviously, we've been taking some fan questions. People have been stopping us in the street going, "Hey guys, are you interviewing Ken Shamrock?" And we go, "No." And they go, "All right." And then keep on walking by because we have to lie about these things because we've been getting so many fan questions in. It's going to be a lot of fun having Ken and Cass. The other big guest is going to be, as you mentioned, the Beast, Bob Sapp. You know, he's going to be stopping by in the second portion of the show. And obviously a controversial figure in MMA, one of the most entertaining figures in MMA. So it's going to be a very, very exciting opportunity to find out what Bob's been up to and what the real deal is with Bob Sapp.
Two guests, two big interviews. It's going to be an absolutely jam-packed show. And because of these big interviews, we won't be talking about much else. So if you are tuning in on YouTube, feel free to click that link, check out those annotations, and skip to either the Ken Shamrock interview or the Bob Sapp interview. Don't forget to comment. Let us know what you think and what you want to know for the future. And as always, follow us on Twitter at SubmissionOz. That's AUS. And we can chat more about fights there.
That's right, guys. Don't forget to do all that exciting stuff. Subscribe to the channel. Also, released this week was our exclusive footage from the EA UFC game. So if you're a big gaming fan or you're excited about this game, we actually have a really fun interview with the assistant producer, don't we, Cass?
Yeah, Jazz Bruzo. Actually, that's coming up really, really soon. As most people know, there is that cheeky little embargo that prevents us from releasing any information just yet. But it is really soon. We're not going to tell you the day just because it is subject to change, and we wouldn't want them changing things last minute. But next week, big EA UFC news roster reveal. Stay glued to our channel because we'll be revealing the roster. We know it. We know it pretty much off by heart. There'll be another another video with that, and we will be doing a Q&A. So don't forget to get your comments in there for what you want to know about EA Sports UFC, and we'll be doing a separate video as well as our interview.
Yeah, that's right. And a fun little interview with Robert Whittaker as well. Obviously, the Australian Ultimate Fighter, big fight coming up at the New Zealand card. So, yeah, we had a chat with Rob, and the video of that will be up as well. So check all that fun stuff out. But Cass, I think without further ado, I think it's time for our first guest. Very excited to be speaking to this man. You know, for a lot of MMA fans like you and me, he's been an icon, someone that's gotten us into the sport, someone that's been, you know, in pro wrestling and MMA. So I'm very excited to have him on the show, and I believe we have him on the phone.
All right, guys. Our next guest is a legend in both mixed martial arts and pro wrestling. He is a former UFC Superfight champion, Pancrase champion, Intercontinental champion, King of the Ring, and no matter what he's competing in, he is always the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock. Ken, welcome to Submission Radio.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's great having you on the show. Just something that we want to talk to you about. Let's get this out of the way. Obviously, you're in the security business. It was big news the other day. Beyonce's sister attacking Jay Z as the security guard, you know, stood there idly. Tell us, what are your thoughts here? What exactly went wrong?
Well, you know, like I said, it's hard to say because I'm only getting bits and pieces of it. But from what I saw, there was some mistakes made, but, you know, it's like I said, it's hard being in that situation, knowing everything that I saw, but not knowing everything that happened. But, you know, he really should have probably not, one, got in the elevator. He should have known that there was a problem happening before they walked into the elevator. And he probably should have gotten whoever his client was away from that situation immediately.
Now, Ken, obviously a lot of people are talking about it. You're a security expert. You work, you know, with the VIPs, the high celebrities. Can you tell us a little bit about that career? There were some rumors that you were working with 50 Cent and other well-known celebrities.
Yeah, you know, I work for a company, Protect, out of Las Vegas, and we get different types of celebrities, very high-end celebrities that are, you know, either have some pretty high-risk situations that they need some really good bodyguard work, some good executive client work. And so They usually call me in or call. There's like 3 or 4 guys on our staff that handle those kind of high-end clients. And so we get those calls. We get to come in and we get to work with some of these celebrities who are looking for a little more extra protection.
I was gonna say, Ken, obviously, you're a well-known name. You're one of the pioneers of MMA. Have you ever gone, to do the security detail, to head the security, and all these celebrities were like, "Holy crap, you're Ken Shamrock. I'm a huge fan of yours."
Yeah, that happens. Yeah, definitely it happens, and I think it's probably happened to most of them. But again, like I said, I've done fighting my whole life, and it seemed like I was always the one everybody wanted to protect, and I was the guy that people had bodyguards for, and it was silly to me. I always kept thinking in my mind, why do people bodyguard me? And it never really sat well with me, right? I just thought I was just a regular guy. People love to watch me fight. I never saw the reason for it. And then when I stopped fighting, I thought to myself, you know what? I should be the one doing the bodyguard work. I should be the one protecting these people because, that's what I've done that my whole life is fighting. What better person to protect you is somebody who has made a career out of fighting and being able to learn how to use his body to be able to protect people. So I just switched over, and I loved it, man. I really did. And I know a lot of people are asking me, well, why would you want to do that? Isn't that going backwards? And I was like, why would that be going backwards? Because you want to be a service to somebody. I never had that thought process, and I'm never going to. I think it's egotistical, and I think it's selfish. I don't see why anybody, no matter who you are, that can't turn around and help other people.
Well said. And I was going to ask you, with doing security, it's my assumption that, when you've got a bunch of professionals doing their jobs, the situation is usually pretty smooth and, maybe not as crazy as people think. But have you had a time with any celebrities or while you're doing security where, there has been a crazy situation?
Yeah, oh yeah. Like I said, we get hired for the high end clients and things where there's some risk involved. And so we get involved with those things sometimes, and we've had some run-ins where, we've had some people try to walk up and do some things, and we've had to be on our toes to defuse the situation. So, like I said, I didn't get into this to stand around and sit on my hands and serve coffee to people. I got into this because I wanted to get as edgy and living on the edge as possible, and be able to help people while I'm doing it.
Now, Ken, that's amazing. So I think, that's just a new level of respect that all the fans have for you. Going to your MMA career, obviously, a lot of fans see you as an MMA pioneer. We had Royce Gracie on the show a couple of weeks back, and I think, you and Royce, you're some of the names that people just smile at when they think about. Do you ever look back on your rivalry with Royce and the beginning of the UFC, and do you ever, what do you think when you look at that footage, that initial footage of, MMA when it really kicked off back in the day?
I feel proud, to know that we were a part of something that makes so many people happy, and entertains so many people, and that we were a part of making that history. And it's something that will never, I don't care how many times Dana White or the Fertittas try to change the history books or to change things, they'll never be able to take that away, ever.
I would definitely agree. Well, tell us a little bit. I'm sure it's something that you've been asked, a lot of times throughout your career. But what was it like walking into UFC 1? Not exactly knowing what you expect. What was going through your head?
Well, it was. Well, at first I didn't think it was really going to happen. Only time I ever heard any stuff was pro wrestling when they said no holds barred, and so I was fighting over in Japan, in the organization in Japan, the Pancras organization, and so I really never even thought this was going to happen. I thought, well, they're going to go, okay, well, this is how it's going to be. We're really not going to do this. So I accepted the invitation they gave me to go and fight. But the whole time I'm thinking to myself, it's not going to happen. So I went to Japan and I defended my title. I knocked out Fouquet with the knee. And 3 days before I was supposed to go to Denver and actually have that first UFC fight. And I flew into Denver 3 days prior to the event, really not believing that it was going to happen the way they say it was going to happen. And so it wasn't until I actually was in the locker room and I watched the first fight where Gerard Godot kicked the sumo in the face and his teeth went flying, did I realize that this was the real deal.
Now, now, Ken, you were a huge part of pro wrestling, and you know we do love pro wrestling here at Submission Radio. I was always wondering, why did you choose to go into pro wrestling? Was it a passion of yours, or did you simply go into it due to the huge popularity of pro wrestling in the 90s?
No, I went into it because I had already done it. I already did it with Roy Nelson and Nelson Royal and what was it? Nelson Royal and Gene Anderson in Mooresville, North Carolina. And so I had already been doing it for almost a year and a half. And before I went over to Japan, I started fighting over there. And then, of course, I got in the UFC. And then it started to die out. And then I had an opportunity to go do something else. And I remembered that I'd done pro wrestling, and I enjoyed it. I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to be able to go into pro wrestling, still practice my submission moves in pro wrestling, so that if I wanted to go back into MMA after they got all their ducks in a row and started getting the business thing put together, I could go back and still fight. And so I made that move, knowing that I'd already started in pro wrestling. Vince McMahon was going to give me a huge opportunity and move me straight up to the top, and I'd be able to be me, Ken Shamrock, the fighter.
Ken, I was going to ask you, obviously, you did leave pro wrestling a couple of times to go back to MMA. One of those times, obviously, when you had a great position, with the WWF or the WWE now. Do you ever think about whether you should have stayed in pro wrestling a little bit longer, or on the other side of the coin, maybe didn't leave MMA and stayed in MMA a bit longer and take those breaks for pro wrestling?
Well, I couldn't stay in MMA because the reason why I left MMA was because I couldn't support my family. They were getting taken off pay-per-view. The commissioning was always on their butts trying to shut them down. Bob Meyerowitz was having a hard time keeping the shows running. And so I couldn't stay because I couldn't support my family. And to me, that was number one, was being able to take care of my family. And so I had to make a move in order to take care of my family. And luckily for me, I got to be able to go into a business where I could still practice my art. And I did that. So I look back on it, and anybody can look back and say, well, I should have done this and I should have done that. But I look back on it, and I thought I made really good decisions because I could have stayed and it would have flopped. And I would have been struggling my whole life, and I made a good move to be able to get into pro wrestling. And on top of it, where nobody gives me credit for this, was that when I went back to the MMA world, I brought all the fans that noticed me in the WWF, and they were all wondering who I was and where I came from. They all did their background check on me, and then MMA became popular because everybody knew that that's where I came from. Then when I went back into MMA, I brought all those fans back into MMA who weren't watching MMA and blew up the numbers. When me and Tito fought, we blew the numbers up, tripled, quadrupled them compared to what they were making, and nobody, not Fertitas or anybody, wanted to give me any credit whatsoever for helping keep the UFC where it's at today.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you hear a lot of times people and fans talking about how when you did come back, that is another part of what saved MMA and the UFC, not only, the Forrest and Bonner fight and things like that. But you mentioned MMA pay and how you couldn't support your family. And, obviously we're further down the track with MMA. The sport's evolved, but I think a lot of people are still struggling as far as MMA pay goes. Still not comparing to boxing. It's still a young sport, though. Do you think that soon we might see MMA pay rise to the level of other athletes like boxing and basketball?
No, because they won't, because they don't have to. And, it's sad because even when people look at it and go, well, that guy made $1 million. It's like, do you realize that this guy that made $1 million has put his whole life into this thing? and drew enough for the UFC to bring in $120 million, and they gave him $1 million for people coming to watch him fight. Him. And the UFC, the people in the UFC don't have to worry about a time frame that their bodies are going to hold out long enough to be able to keep fighting. They get to keep going on and making money and not worrying about injuries. These guys are in it for 3 to 5 years. 5 years if they're lucky, but 3 years max for most of these guys. And they got to make that money now. And to not pay them what the money that they deserve to get paid, it to me is absolutely a sin.
Now, Ken, I got an interesting question for you. Obviously, you worked with Vince McMahon, you've done WrestleMania before, and you've worked with Dana White. Out of those two, who do you think gives a fairer paycheck in terms of the work that you put in their company?
For me, I don't know what other people say, but for me, it's definitely Vince. I felt like he did me right. Even though he may, I don't know what the issues are with me and him now, because I've never did anybody ever talk to me or say anything. But for me personally, I thought he treated me very fairly. He paid me well, and I thought he gave me a great opportunity to be able to keep competing in the W. Of course, I had to do my job. I had to do what they needed me to do, or otherwise he wouldn't give me the time of day. I understand that. I understood that. But when I did do what I was supposed to do, he paid me what I deserved.
Now, let me ask you, because as fans of both sports, this one's always intrigued us, and I think a lot of people as well. As far as the schedule and the lifestyle of an MMA fighter versus a pro wrestler, because MMA fighters, you've got, it is real fighting. Pro wrestling, you've got a crazy schedule over the whole year. Which one do you think has the harder lifestyle and schedule?
Oh, WW. Yeah, the WW. That's definitely not, without a shadow of a doubt, that's the hardest program.
Now, Ken, obviously, there was a big WrestleMania 30 recently, and a lot of people were shocked about, Undertaker's streak finishing and Brock Lesnar beating him. We just wanted to get your thoughts. What are your thoughts on the product these days? Do you ever watch it still? Would you ever, want to you're 50 years old, but you're in great shape. Would you ever consider coming back in a Legends-type contract deal with the WWE, doing a few appearances? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I would, like I said, I've already voiced my opinion that it would be nice to be able to come back there and get a shot at, get a run at the title. One that I don't think I really got an opportunity to really get an honest run at it. So yeah, I've always made that statement. It'd be nice to be able to go back and give it one more shot. But again, like I said, it's not in my corner, and I don't make those calls. So, it's up to somebody else to do that. So all I can do is just voice my opinion and say, yeah, it'd be great to do it. But somebody else has to make that decision.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to fans as well. I mean, as someone who's always been buying, the WWE games year after year, I mean, you were a legend in, I think, the 2013 one with the Attitude Era, so it was good to see you there. Yeah, I think a lot of fans, they're still sort of, you resonate with them. Is there anything on the cards as far as being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? Have you heard anything about this or anything like that?
No, no. I haven't heard anything. That's the whole thing. Is it's just like tried to put my, reach out and try to contact some different people, but basically there's been not a sign or a peep back. So, I have no idea, absolutely none whatsoever, what the issues or problems are. I didn't know there was any until nobody would talk to me.
Yeah, I think it is a bit strange. I think a lot of fans, and let me get your opinion. Do you find it a bit disrespectful that in the WWE Hall of Fame, you've got greats like Andre the Giant, Jesse the Body, Billy Graham, Hogan, Bret Hart, Ric Flair, Stone Cold, and more. But then you also have guys like Drew Carey and Donald Trump just because of their celebrity status. And yet you were part of the Attitude Era. You're part of WrestleMania 13 and one of the most important matches of all time. And yet you haven't been inducted. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, not even WrestleMania 13, where it was one of the bigger ones that changed which really changed it into the Attitude Era. But with me being the referee, coming from where I came from, and then you look at pro wrestling prior to Ken Shamrock and after Ken Shamrock, and you look to see that there's probably 100 more submission holds in the WWE because of me entering into the world of pro wrestling to bring in those submissions so people could look at them and legitimize them for pro wrestling. You look at it before I was there and after I was there. It's different matches.
Now, Ken, I always wanted to ask you this question personally. You know, I was always a WCW fan. Have you ever come close during that popularity time, 97, 98, 99, to going over to WCW for a little bit and wrestling there?
No. Like I said, I was sold with WWF. I thought that they gave me a great opportunity. I was very happy with them. They paid me well, and I was happy. Problem is that, you know, when things start happening and you know, you're away from your family all the time, and you know, it wore on you. And so, you know, I needed to be back home. It was wearing on me. The road was killing me. I wasn't the same person, so I needed a break. So I appreciate everything that they did for me and all the opportunity they gave me. And so, yeah, no, I wouldn't. Not while I was on the contract. I would have never gone anywhere else.
Now, also, Ken, you mentioned, you know, coming into the WWE and pro wrestling to get all those submissions in. Now, there's another guy that's sort of, I guess, similar in his own ways, and that's Daniel Bryan. You work with him in Ring of Honor. What are your thoughts on his WWE success? You know, he's very much into grappling and BJJ, and not only that, but do you think he'd make a good MMA fighter?
Well, I mean, again, like I said, I think that with anybody, there's an opportunity, you take it. But how that opportunity comes out, it depends on every individual. I can look at somebody and say, "Wow, this guy's got all the talent in the world," and man, he's got every ability to be the world's best, and go in and just fall on his face. So, I mean, I can look at Danny Bryan and say, "Yeah, I think he's got potential. I think he could do well," but it's getting into the ring and doing it. That's the key. Can you do that? That's it. So you can't give anybody any credit until they do it.
Ken, I was going to say, obviously, the future of the WWE is with Triple H at the moment. It looks like he is slowly taking over the company. It looks like he will be controlling the company in the future one day. What are your thoughts on Triple H? And do you think that when he does take over the company completely, it will be good for the sport of pro wrestling, or do you think that it could be a problem?
Well, I think we're seeing it now. And I'm not saying anything to be mean or hurtful or anything. I'm just, if people want my opinion, I'm going to give it to them, and I'm not going to, sugarcoat it. I'm just going to tell them the truth. But if it keeps going the way it's going, I don't see WWF being a powerhouse anymore. I see it falling. I see it crumbling down, and the only thing that people are going to be interested in is the history footage, because I see it now. I see it's struggling now. Even though you're starting to see little things here and there, but it's just to be able to consistently do what Vince McMahon did. I'm just not sure we're ever going to see that again.
Oh, yeah, Ken, we wanted to ask you something. You know, as big fans, there's a lot of crazy stories. You know, in pro wrestling, wrestling's got obviously its share of traditions and customs and laws. You got wrestlers' court, things like that. What was one of the more interesting backstage incidents that happened at a WWE show that you remember?
Well, I tell you, the biggest one to me was when Owen, when he fell. I mean, we were standing backstage, and I was in a grill station, and I watched it happen. And for the longest time, we stood there and just stared at the monitor, waiting for some gimmick to pop up, or for the match to start, or for him to pop up. And then when he was wheeled back in the gurney, still we were waiting for him to get up. I mean, we just didn't believe that it was real, because all the gimmicks and stuff that go on there, and you're never told what's happening, and they'll play it all the way out till the next week. And so for the longest time, I think the fans were the same way, was that no one really truly understood what was happening at that moment, and how real it was. And for us, I mean, even though there was a meeting about whether we were going to go on and do the show, we were going to keep doing it, out of his honor we're going to do it, in the back of everybody's mind, we were all thinking we were getting worked. Like, this is a work. Somebody's working us. And so I'm not sure anybody really grasped that until probably after a few weeks afterwards, where it set in the funeral and in the news, and it really set in that it was real. But you imagine that, not really knowing something like that, because the company and everything that you do there is all subject to entertainment.
Yeah, wow, yeah, and it was definitely one of the more tragic moments in sports and entertainment, and yeah, that would have been brutal to be a part of. So definitely a different experience. Now, going back to MMA, obviously, performance-enhancing drugs in the sport have been a problem. They've recently banned TRT. What are your thoughts on the whole performing-enhancing drug problem in MMA? Do you think it's getting better, or do you think it can be stopped?
Well, first of all, I think that when people talk about banning these substances, it's funny because I don't think people really realize what they're asking or what they're saying. Is if they take these things out of sports, people are going to be backed up 20 years as far as competitiveness. What people used to see in colleges that are now like pro now, and professionals like they're supermen, the level of play will be dropped significantly in fighting, in football, in basketball, and everything that we're used to seeing. The athleticism and the strength and the stuff these guys are doing will be dropped significantly, and the entertainment value will drop with it. And people are, and I don't even really think people are realizing what they're asking for. Is they're asking for the entertainment, the value of the entertainment to drop significantly, and we're going to be okay with that. Considering what we're used to seeing, it's just not going to be the same. And I think people say, oh, it'll still be good, it'll be this. I just don't really believe they understand what it is that they're really asking for. And I believe, personally, that these things were made to help people in their health. And I believe that there's a safe level for people to take these kind of things to help their body recover, to be a safe athlete, and be able to get in the ring and compete on a safe level, and then be able to have their bodies recover enough for them to be normal throughout the week, rather than have these guys afraid of getting caught, so they won't go to a doctor, so they won't get it legally. They go in the black market, they get it because they can't let anybody know they got it, because then they can lose the ability to fight or their pro card or whatever it is that they're doing. They'll get caught, the media will find out, they'll get banned, they'll get fined. All these things happen, so they'll go on the black market and get it. And that's where the problem is that they're getting stuff they don't know what they're doing. They don't have doctors in their care to help them do it the proper way, so they're not putting their health at risk. And so that's the issue right there. I think that they can somehow find a safe level, make these guys all make sure they got their own doctors to put them, if they're going to go on it, to have their own doctors put them on it, and make sure the doctors are giving physicals every month, once a month, keeping them at a safe level. I think that's how you fix the problem. It's crazy to think people go, oh well, we're going to stop it now. Now that it's going on for 50 years, we're just going to completely ban it now, because I promise you this, and I'm not sure. I'll bet you people who understand how many people are using it in sports, they know how badly the athletic level will drop. It'll be so bad that people won't want to turn on the TV anymore, because they're not going to be able to see what they're used to seeing.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely interesting. I was going to ask you, obviously, the UFC and Nevada and all these state athletic commissions, they were copping a lot of flack for this. Do you think they basically caved to? Do you think they basically banned them to help everybody's well-being, or do you think they caved more to the public pressure?
Well, I just think they did it because they want to try and get on people's good sides. And the funny thing is too is like, the fans don't even really know what they're saying. I mean, I understand that they want to make everybody safe, and I love them for that. But the reality of it is the reason why it's unsafe is because they can't go to a doctor, because they'll get banned. Now, if they make these things for people that are sick and losing weight, and it's good for them, it helps people put on muscle and to recover from a sickness. Imagine what it'll do when you get a guy in there that's training for 5 years and his body's tore down, and he's able to go in and actually help his body recover like a racing car putting high octane fuel in it, because it has to go so fast all the time, and it's always getting these fresh parts put in there, high performance parts put in these vehicles, so that they're able to sustain the pressure these cars put on their engines year round. The body is the same way, where these guys are putting so much pressure on their bodies that they need things to help them be able to recover and sustain the punishment they're putting on their bodies. And if you do it at a safe level, and most doctors, any honest doctor will tell you, if you put them under a doctor's care and they're under a doctor's care and they're at a safe level, it won't hurt you.
And Ken, you mentioned that it will change what the sport looks like. It won't be as entertaining. And, you bring up some really interesting points that a lot of people haven't before. What I was going to ask you is, in the 90s, how many people do you think were on performance-enhancing substances? And, obviously it was a very entertaining time in MMA. Do you think it's one of the reasons that was so entertaining?
Well, of course it was. I mean, yeah, and again, like I said, it's hard to say how many people are on, but I think you look across the board, and you look at, and the funny thing is when you look at some of these guys, fans will go, he's not using, and it's like, listen, I'm in there, I'm in the locker room, and I know what guys are doing. And it's funny when I hear them say that, because it just makes me laugh. Just because they don't have abs, and they don't have big old biceps, and they don't have the form of a bodybuilder, doesn't mean that they're not using. I promise you that. These guys, most of them, are all trying to improve themselves to be a world champion. And I'm not saying all of them, because I don't know if all of them are doing it. But I'm saying there's a significant amount of them that are doing it.
Now, Ken, as far as a lot of MMA legends and pioneers, it seems that these days a lot of them are uniting. Now, you recently mended the bridge with your brother Frank, who is another MMA and Pancrase legend. What was it like to be on the same page after so many years of not seeing eye to eye, and how exactly did it come about? That you two mended the bridge.
Well, I mean, my brother came out with that documentary, Blood Brothers, Bound by Blood, and so it was an opportunity for us to get together and really talk about things. And I was happy. I was happy the way it came out. It seemed like he was trying to make an effort to try and make things right, and so I opened my arms. That's all I ever wanted, was for him to make an honest effort to fix what he broke. I mean, I didn't break it. I didn't do those things. He did. And I'm not saying I wasn't at fault at all, because I was. I know I was. But I wasn't the one that walked out and left, and I wasn't the one that didn't go to my dad's funeral. I wasn't the one that was there when he was sick. I didn't do those things. And so I embraced him when he did that. I was happy, because I think it's something he's going to need to have clarification on sooner or later, and I'm glad he did it. So I was glad to be able to be a part of that, and actually now move forward with him and put that behind us, because, like I said, we've been through a lot together. We've done a lot of things together, and it'd be a shame for us not to be able to enjoy them.
And I think, any person, whether you're a fighter or just a regular guy, who makes coffee or whatever the case is, it's always good when you've been with, through a lot of things with someone, you can, mend that bridge. Obviously, another person that you've had a tumultuous relationship with is Dana White, but as proved with your relationship with your brother, time heals all wounds. Do you ever see yourself and Dana White be on good terms again? I
would hope so. A lifetime's a long time to go, be hating somebody or being angry at somebody. And I like I said, I may have spoke out at times and been angry at times, just as he has been. But lately, all I'm doing is just trying to make sure that we don't ruin the sport, that we don't, these fighters that are coming in there and putting their bodies on the line and that are basically risking it all to be a professional fighter, and then they get to that level where they've all dreamed to get to, and then they walk away with not necessarily empty pockets, but empty pockets when it comes to the amount of money they're getting paid as opposed to what they're making off of these guys. It's not fair, and it doesn't matter whether I like Dan or I don't like Dan, because it's irrelevant. It's wrong.
And I think, you know, when it comes to business, personal feelings, sometimes they don't really matter. Sometimes it's about, you know, doing the right thing. Obviously, with your brother, you know, it was a family situation, and certain things had to happen, you know, to mend that bridge. With Dana White, and I feel like a car salesman almost, like, what would have to happen in order for you guys to get back on the same page?
Well, I personally, I think it would have to be Dana to want to open up, to want to, you know, explore, putting it behind us. But what he'll have to realize is that I still are going to speak out against fighter pay and fighter treatment. It's not necessarily directed just at him, but it's directed at the organization. And obviously, he's one of the heads of the organization. But there's no reason for him to hate me or to call me names or to try and change the history books, do all those things because someone's trying to speak out for something that's right. And if I'm not right, by all means, prove me wrong.
Ken, there's been a lot of stories about that you guys had an alleged fight over you wanting to be involved with the IFL a while back, and you were supposed to fight Bisping. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Was that the reason why your contract with the UFC didn't work out in the end?
You know, it was a while back. I can't even, you know, get into the details on that. I don't really know. I know it was a lot of things that happened that just didn't make sense. It was stupid. But again, it was because of, you know, probably because Dana was mad because I said something that I spoke out against, you know, fighter pay, fighter treatment. I don't know. It was a while back, but I know it was pretty sickening and stupid the way it happened.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. And, you know, we had Randy Couture on the show a few shows back, and, you know, he said a very similar thing to you, and both of you obviously really do care about the sport. My question to you is, would you ever consider being a part of creating an MMA union for these fighters? Obviously, you know so much. It really seems like you care about the sport and care about the fighters. Is that something that you could see yourself doing one day?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt. You know, we've explored them options, and, you know, and everything's, you know, when the time is right, I think those things will come about. But again, like I said, there's a lot of things that have to happen in order for those things to be able to start moving forward. And I think that, you know, the more that the UFC and the way that the UFC's doing their business, the more and more they're pushing, the more they're going to push that union to flourish.
Now, Ken, I wanted to ask you, because the UFC in general, you know, they really are evolving as a company. MMA is evolving. I wanted to ask you, when, you know, obviously when you were winning fights in the UFC, one thing that people never expected, and that was women in the octagon. You know, now I've got, you know, we've got Ronda Rousey and things like that. What are your thoughts on women's MMA?
I've always been pro. You can go all the way back to when I was interviewed when Dana White said there'll never be any women fighting in the UFC, not as long as he's there. And you can go all the way back to that, and I've always been pro women for MMA. I've always thought it was a great thing. I think women are exciting. They're great to watch. I mean, you watch them in boxing. That's what I actually compared it to when I was asked. And I said, well, you look at boxing. I said, some of the best fights in the card are the women. So why not MMA? And then Dana at the time was saying women will never fight in the UFC. But you ask him about it, so I never said that. People can pull up the quote. Well, he didn't say that.
He certainly does say a lot of stuff that he takes back later on. I was going to ask, just on the whole fighter pay area, obviously the UFC want to introduce uniforms into the company, and a lot of fighters are worried about it because it may restrict their possibility in making money from sponsors. What are your thoughts on UFC creating a uniform for the sport?
Well, first of all, they're already taking percentages of the sponsorship monies that will come in from anybody, and then they have to accept those sponsorship monies, so it has to be enough money for UFC to make anything, and so the fighters have really been limited on how much money they can even make for their sponsorships, and then now it's going to be nil. I mean, they're going to put uniforms on, and the UFC is going to have big major sponsors on these uniforms, and they're going to get all of that money, and the fighters are going to get zero.
Now, Ken, basically, when we announced that you were going to be on the show, we also opened up the opportunity for fans to ask you questions. And suffice it to say, when we opened the floodgates, the response we got was by far bigger than any previous guest we've had. So if it's okay with you, we'd like to ask you a few questions from the fans.
Sure.
Now, Alan Partridge, I think this one's a bit hopeful. Ken, are you officially retired?
Oh, no. I'll never retire. I'll never fight again, but I'll never retire.
King of Fists wants to know, Ken, besides yourself, who's the greatest of all time out of Fedor, Anderson, GSP, or another name that might be in your head?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to have to go with Rickson Gracie. I think Rickson was probably the best of all.
And I think, yeah, he probably doesn't get as mentioned as much as he should. Alex88, what are your favorite leg lock setups from the top and the bottom?
Say that again.
What are your favorite leg lock setups from the top and from the bottom?
Well, when someone's mounting me on the top, I love to bump them, get a knee inside, and then sweep the legs around for a heel hook. When the guy's mounting me, bump him up, knee inside, throw a leg over, and heel hook him. When I'm on top, it's simple, man. I love to split and sit, and then I look for whatever they give me.
Bad guy 4523. His question is: in your prime, you had some of the best takedowns and takedown defense in the game, and he says that I know in the first fight with Tito you had a blown out ACL, and in the second and third fight you could not underhook to prevent his takedowns due to a shoulder injury. Would you have been able to prevent Tito from taking you down if not for these injuries? And would you have been able to take Tito down yourself?
Well, I think if you look at my track record, I went against a guy named Dwayne Kozlowski, who was a Greco-Roman world-class medalist in the Olympics, and I destroyed him. I went against Dan Severn, who was a world-class wrestler. I was able to stop his takedown several times and choke him out. And so if you look at my record across dealing with guys that were in that world-class level of boxing and also wrestling, I was able to dominate them. They couldn't get me to the ground, and I was able to get them to the ground. And you look at Tito's level of wrestling. Great wrestler he really was, but he didn't make it into that college level. So if I was going to compare me at that, that's how I would compare it. And if you compare it like that, I would say absolutely yes. There's no question I would have been a different fighter, and it would have been a much different. It would have been a lot more difficult for him to be able to try and take me down. And then with my submissions, being able to counter that takedown into a submission would have really been dangerous for him.
Now, speaking of Tito, the Scorpion wanted to ask, with Tito, is there any bad blood left, or is the beef squashed completely?
I don't have any bad blood. It was mostly just carried on because I think that it went past the ring, and it should have never gone that far. We were there to do a job. We were there to fight each other. I got prepared the way I got prepared. He got prepared the way he got prepared, and it should have ended there. It should have gone outside the ring. We let it go outside the ring. That was our bad. But I'm over it. I want to look to the future, and I want to try and help build MMA, and I want to try and make sure and help get the fighters the pay that they deserve and the treatment they deserve. And the only way we could do that is for guys like myself, Tito Ortiz, Rampage Jackson, my brother Frank, obviously, Randy Couture. All these guys. I can go on and on and be listing guys that can actually help us. George St. Pierre. All these guys who can help us make sure that the UFC doesn't go into a direction that boxing did, and then we end up losing this thing that we have been so hard trying to build over the years, and just have it go away because of the way you're paying and treating fighters.
Absolutely, Ken. And Tito is gonna fight on the weekend. Just on the side note, what do you think about him coming back into MMA and fighting in Bellator? Do you think that was a wise move from Tito's part?
I think that anybody who has given so much to the sport deserves the right and the opportunity to go out the way he wants to go out. I don't think anybody has the right to tell him or anybody else that they're done. That's just not fair. It's not fair. He's given too much to the sport. He's done things for other people. He's helped build the sport. He's been one of the greatest light heavyweight champions ever. And then to tell him he's got to quit, like he doesn't know better, that's not fair.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Bruce Lee on TRT, he doesn't have a question. He just wanted to thank you and Randleman, and says that you are the guys that got him into watching MMA. Strychnine also wanted to ask you, just basically say thank you for your career and that you are a legend. Now, Gina Cup wanted to ask you, after all these great fights over the years, what's your physical condition like, and what's your training schedule like these days? Do you still train?
Well, my physical conditioning is I see a doctor once a month for checkups, just because I've gotten so many surgeries. They just want to make sure that I'm doing a checkup and everything's working right. But I've got brackets in my neck from 3 through 7. I got metal brackets in my neck. My lower back, the first 5 brackets in my lower back, I've got metal brackets in my lower back, the first 5. And then in my shoulder, I got a titanium ball in my right shoulder, and I got a titanium screw ACL replacement in my left knee. And so I've had pretty severe injuries. But with surgeries and stuff and the checkups that I get once a month, I've been very blessed to be able to move around and still be able to train, work out, not like I used to, but at least just keep my physical fitness and my shape, and be able to do bodyguard work, executive client work, and be able to still play sports. So I've been blessed in that sense. So my life's really good. I've got my grandkids and my kids. I get to spend time with them. I get to go and do sports with them. So yeah, things are good with me. I'm real happy. And but my physical, after all those things I told you about, I feel good. So yeah, thank you for asking.
Wow, and it's great to see that you're in such a good place. Now, Fedor 43 wants to know what your favorite MMA fight of all time is, excluding your fights.
Excluding mine?
Yep.
Oh, wow! There's so many great ones. I would have to say most recently, Chael Sonnen and Silva, or the armbar in like the last minute there. I thought that was amazing, tremendous to take that kind of beating for that many rounds and still be able to pull off that armbar. Physically, if you watch that match, that was like the American hockey team, the Miracle on Ice. They had no chance, where the Russians beat them 12-0 2 months prior to that, right? They had no chance. And that's just like watching that fight. When you watch the Silva, you just looked at it, he had no chance, none. And he did it. So that was pretty amazing.
And just on the side note, with Anderson Silva, obviously he had such a big injury with his leg. Do you think he can return and fight at the same level that he fought at before? Or do you think this is more of a thing where the UFC wants him to return because obviously he's such a huge draw and they just want to get him in there as soon as possible?
Well, I think he's a draw, but I think they also want to make sure that they beat him. Like they beat him soundly and he's done. He's over. I know they did it with the one guy, but the second time around he got hurt. So they just want a final answer and a final note to the end of him, that he got beat soundly and it's over.
Now, Ken, we're going to move on to the tap-out round in just a moment, but I just wanted to get one more fan question in there because there's a lot of questions from these fans. We've got one more. Grinderman just basically wanted to say that your fight with Don Frye is one of his favorite fights in MMA ever. But the question is from Shiner, and it is, out of the current big-name stars in MMA, who do you think embodies the old-school fighting spirit of early MMA the most?
I didn't get that. Say that.
Out of all the current big-name stars of MMA, who do you think embodies the old-school fighting spirit of early MMA the most?
Wow. I don't know. I don't know, because it's hard, because everybody's the same today. It's like there's really no, and they're all good. I mean, they're all got really good talent. But it just seems like they're all the same. There's really nobody that stands out.
There you go, guys. Now, Ken, we're going to be doing this thing. It's called the tap out round. It's like a word association. We're going to throw some fun questions at you, and you just tell us what the first thing is that comes to your mind. Okay? Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Greatest pro wrestler that you've ever worked with?
The Rock.
Okay, what does Ken Shamrock do for fun?
Golf.
If you could rematch one person in your MMA career, who would it be?
Tito.
The strongest opponent you've ever faced?
Masakatsu Tsunaki.
Did you enjoy being a coach on The Ultimate Fighter?
No.
Best memory from Japan?
World champion. Pancras world champion.
Does 50 Cent do any MMA, and did you teach him any moves or have a role with him?
Yes, absolutely. I think he'd be good.
Now, the famous living death quote, how did this come about? Was it something that you thought of beforehand, like cutting a promo, or was it just heat of the moment?
What do you say?
The living death quote, when you and Tito were doing the press conference, was it something you practiced before, like cutting a promo, or was it just heat of the moment?
No, I just said it. Just thought of it and did it.
Was Steve Blackman a legitimate badass?
Yes.
Now, apparently, Undertaker has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and has always been a fan of MMA. Is this true?
Yes.
What were your thoughts on the only shoot event the WWE did? It was called Brawl for All, and do you wish you were a part of it?
No.
Out of all your amazing achievements, which one do you think is the greatest?
I would have to say the first UFC champion, super fight champion.
Well, there you guys go. An amazing man. You know, such a pleasure to have you on the show, Ken. You know, all your Australian fans and fans from around the world listening to this interview, I think they really, really appreciate your time. Such honest answers, you know, such a great man, such a great career. And, you know, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and God bless everybody. And don't forget to follow me. It's Shamrock Ken. Shamrock Ken, at Shamrock Ken on Twitter.
Don't worry, we didn't forget. We were building up to it. But yeah, guys, definitely check out Ken Shamrock, at Shamrock Ken. We will be sending out the links, and we'll be putting it up on this website. Ken, just want to thank you again. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on Submission Radio.
All right, thanks, guys. God bless.
So there you have it, guys. Ken Shamrock, another legendary MMA icon added to the Submission Radio Hall of Fame. Pleasure chatting to the guy. Absolutely all class.
Yeah, he's a great guy. You know, some great thoughts there on Dana White, his experiences in the UFC and the WWE, his thoughts on, you know, a whole range of things. So, yeah, an amazing interview. And thank you so much for Ken for his time. It was a real pleasure. And guys, if you are checking this out on YouTube, just remember you can check us out on the move on Stitcher, TuneIn, and iTunes. Have it on your phone, have it on your TV, have it in the background while you're eating dinner. Whatever you want, Submission Radio is there for you. You know, Cass, it's also there for you during those long work days, those long tram rides, those car rides. You know, whenever you need to listen to it, we're available for you on Stitcher, TuneIn, and iTunes.
Yeah, we're like Tom from MySpace. We're just always there for you. And in case you didn't already subscribe to the channel Submission Radio AU, we will be having a whole bunch of information on EA Sports UFC. It's coming up in the next few days. Look out for it, guys. Roster reveal, game preview, and interview with assistant producer Jazz Bruzo. So keep an eye on that. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter as well. It is at SubmissionOzAUS.
That's right, guys. And some great classic interviews on the channel there. We've got Randy Couture. We've got Jake Ellenberger. Obviously, he's going to be fighting at UFC 173. TJ Dillashaw, who's going to be fighting at UFC 173 as well. So check out those interviews with a whole lot more fun things there. So, you know, Chad Mendes stopped by last week. We had a great chat with him. He had some interesting things to say about Conor McGregor. So, yeah, hop on there. You know, Bas Rutten says a lot of stuff. You know, our interview with Alistair Overeem, you know, a lot of people sent us comments about that. They enjoyed that one. So, yeah, a lot of fun there on the channel. Check it out. Our next guest, however, you know, is one of the biggest figures in MMA. And I suppose that's a really interesting point, Cass, because this guy, he never really fought in the UFC, you know, and in Japan, this guy is a god.
Yeah, he is. People worship him. We want to find out what it is like being this guy and walking down the streets of Japan. So without further ado, Dennis, tell the good people who we've got on the show.
Our next guest is one of the most entertaining figures in MMA. He's been a huge star in Pride and K1 and started movies like The Longest Yard. Ladies and gentlemen, We have Bob Sapp on Submission Radio. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Now, you've got to get it right. It's Bob the Beast Sapp.
Well, I'm very sorry, and you are in Japan right now, but I'm still scared for my life when you said that. So, Bob the Beast Sapp, welcome to the show. Now, Bob, 2014, how's it going? You know, for us that aren't living in Japan, we haven't been able to see as much of you, and you haven't competed since 2013. So what have you been up to?
Well, I'll tell you, I've pretty much, I'm retired from fighting. I am just living off of the millions of dollars that I've saved. So that means that I have no debt. So my money goes to work for me, and I'm just laying back and enjoying life. So I travel between Japan and the United States and do so freely.
and all us regular Joes are really jealous of you in that sense, Bob. But let us ask you, is there any better way to bring in the new year than by beating Fedor Emelianenko in an arm wrestling event televised all over Japan?
Oh, man, I tell you, that was an awesome event. I think it's actually one of the best things out there. When I'm asked to do the arm wrestling or when I do some shows, of course, they would like to demonstrate that I'm still very strong, but at the same time, very humble. So arm wrestling happens to be a very nice platform that enables me to do so.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, there's some crazy matchups over there. Who would you say is your toughest competitor so far in the arm wrestling world?
For the arm wrestling, it definitely, I would say it was Fedor, followed by Alistair Overeem, and then that would be followed up, of course, by Mark Hunt and Sammy Schultz. Fedor he just really displayed what I would say is the heart of a champion. What I would say is the heart of the champion, because when I was arm wrestling him, it looked like his wrist was getting ready to snap or getting ready to break, but he continued to handle it and stay in there. Of course, he did have to release before it ended up breaking his wrist, but he did show that, as much damage as he can take, as much strength as he could do, hey, he showed the heart of a champion.
Wow. So just to get this straight, so who was stronger, Fedor or Alistair Overeem?
Oof, I would say it would be Fedor. I would say would be the strongest as far as the standing in there and taking some damage kind of thing. But Alistair, as far as hardcore strength, I would definitely give it to him. So both of them kind of have their different strengths and weaknesses. So it kind of depends on how you would look at it. And when it comes to the Beast, that's exactly how it goes. Because I'm doing mixed martial arts and kickboxing, and of course followed up by pro wrestling in the movies or music or commercials. So each and every one entertaining event or entertaining genre, so to speak, I've got a different strength in each one as well.
That's amazing. I've never been this fascinated by play-by-play commentary on an arm wrestling competition. So this is amazing. Obviously, Bob, you're so entrenched in the culture in Japan. Tell us what's it like being Bob Sapp walking down the streets? The fans must go nuts.
Yes, it's amazing. Everywhere I go in Japan, I'm roughly going to get about 4,000 or 5,000 people to gather around me when I walk, even across the street. So it's a kind of a prison paradise. So what that means is it's a paradise because there's beautiful women, beautiful people. They're all welcome me, and I'm getting tons of gifts and food, and of course money everywhere I go. It's very difficult. The prison part comes in because it's very difficult for me to actually go anywhere without taking photographs or communicating with fans. Sometimes I would love to just go to McDonald's and grab a sandwich or grab a burger. And, if I'm going to do that, that's going to take me about 3 or 4 hours to walk about 3 blocks. Wow. So, but it's okay. And I love it. So I just deal with it and just say, hey, this is how it goes.
The Beast doesn't eat at McDonald's. You're in great shape. I can't see you getting a sandwich from there. But, just speaking of the fans, obviously, like you said, they follow you around everywhere. You get some great gifts. I'd like to hear a crazy story of fan interaction that you've had over your career. We want to hear the craziest story.
Okay, so I've got several. So one crazy story is I was getting in a taxi cab, and I had a female fan completely jump onto the taxi cab naked. She jumped from the hood of the cab straight onto the windshield, and she just was flashing herself completely, and that was quite funny because you can imagine just sitting in the taxi cab, then all of a sudden I thought actually the taxi cab hit somebody, but she just jumped up on the taxi cab and she was completely naked. That was very, very, very funny. I've also had fans that got mad at me losing, and before I got in a taxi cab, they've all went and turned the taxi cab over. So that was a very scary one. So that can happen as well, and they were just they were pretty upset, and it was that was kind of scary itself.
Now, and what about the biggest gift? What's the biggest gift you've ever received?
Okay, well, back about 6 years ago, I had to announce that I would only receive, or I would only accept gifts that would cost 100 yen or less, which would be $1 or less, because I was often given diamonds, platinum necklaces, and gold jewelry and things of this nature. And what I started to feel bad because I was thinking that this could be somebody's mortgage payment, this could be somebody's savings, and because I'm already receiving revenue from my job, I felt that there needed to be no more additional from the fans. So I figured that it's my job to entertain them. It's far from their job to come over there and send me large gifts or extravagant gifts, because they have families and stuff to take care of. So I made an announcement that no longer would I accept any of those things, and they were fine with it, and they of course stopped. And that was what I ended up having to do. So it's kind of crazy.
Wow, that's really noble of you, Bob. But going back to the story before about, you've got this naked lady on the cab, I think you kind of cut off right at the best part. What exactly did you do once you got this naked lady on your cab?
Oh, man. I tell you, before I got my eye candy, so to speak, taxi cab driver did have to, we were really laughing, okay? We were cracking up. And so he ended up, he got out the taxi and just had to get off. She was laughing. So she got off, and we went on our way. But as we were driving, we were laughing so hard that the taxi cab driver he almost ran over the median. Okay, so he was laughing so much that he was never even paying attention to the road. I said, okay, now we're about to die in here. So we started laughing again at that. So that it was a really funny situation.
With Submission Radio listeners, guys, you don't have to send us gifts that are $1 or under. You can actually send us diamonds as well. So this is it's just the opposite of what Bob said. We're not getting up revenue through the show. I'm just kidding. Bob, like you mentioned, you've got your money working for you now. You're in a great spot in life, which is great to see. But, things weren't always like that. When you finished up your NFL career, it's been reported, you had a little bit of issue with money. You even worked in a funeral home, moving coffins around, apparently. Is this true?
Yes. So what happened is I did save my money. However, I saved it with a terrible financial advisor. So he just took my money and ran off with it. So, I was left without any money, and I was left injured. And so I did have to go to work. Now, when you're talking about the kind of the time frame, it looks like this. I was in the NFL. I got injured. I lost my money. Then I was homeless and went to the WCW, where they taught me how to do the pro wrestling and taught me all this great activity. And unfortunately, WCW went bankrupt. And when WCW went bankrupt, I was forced to then again get a job. Well, I was out of the job sector. So at this time, I've only done NFL and did professional wrestling. So there was really no other jobs for me to do. So I had to start back at the ground zero, and any job, any odd job, any job, that was what I wanted. That's what I had to do. So whether it was delivering dead bodies from the hospital to the morgue or picking up or I'm sorry, the other one was learning some life insurance, the kind of the basic kind of generic ones that you would see on television. Think of like your Gerber plan, that kind of thing. I was doing so, including bouncing at nightclubs. I was doing anything and everything just to work, just to get by. Fortunately, I was discovered by the Tough Man Show, which I'd led a professional boxing match. And then again, I was rediscovered by Japan. Of course, the rest is beast history.
I wanted to ask you also, obviously Dennis and I were, were big pro wrestling fans, especially back in the day when you had the Monday Night Wars, WCW and WWF going head to head. What was it like, being in WCW, and did you train at the power plant?
Yes, I did train at the power plant. It was awesome. Kevin Nash, Lex Luger, Bill Goldberg, just to name some of the few. They were awesome. Sarge, Dwayne Bruce, Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, Ted Turner, all of those guys really coached me through, saw me through. I mean, Kevin Nash, he sent me and gave me all of his clothes that he had. So all of his big, sexy clothes that he had at the time. So it was great because at that time, I really needed some additional clothing, okay? So he gave me all his T-shirts and all of these things from his sponsors. And it was great. They all kind of bonded together and helped me get through. And to this day, that's the reason why I always will say that pro wrestling is really what's helped hatch the beast.
Oh, yeah. And you must have been pretty happy when you saw, Scott inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, and Kevin and Sean and all those guys coming on stage with him, and him overcoming all his demons and, making it, into the Hall of Fame. That must have been a nice moment for you, considering you have such a great relationship with those guys.
Absolutely. And let's remember, in Japan, I currently work for IGF, which is Antonio Inoki, who is also inducted in the Hall of Fame of Pro Wrestling. So, I love it. And here in Japan, I am the most popular foreigner inducted in the Hall of Fame for pro wrestling here as well. So, it just kind of continues, and, it spirals off, and it kind of branches off into a different light, and some of the avenues it can go into mixed martial arts, which is basically still pro wrestling, just what we say is a harder style of pro wrestling, and so we still have rules, we still have some sanctioned events. Of course, if it was real fighting, they'd be doing it on concrete, there would be no referee, and it would be life or death. So it's still entertainment, and we enjoy it, and we just kind of showcase that to the masses.
Now, obviously, speaking of Japan, you went to Pride, huge deal. How exactly did you end up there?
Okay, when I first came to Japan, my contract was then handled by K1. K1 ended up doing a kind of like a side contract with Pride, and they both decided to share me. So that means that I was going to be doing MMA, and I was going to be doing kickboxing or K1. So my very first fighting event was Pride, and they just decided, K1 at that time decided that it would be easier for me to learn mixed martial arts before it would be for me to learn kickboxing. However, because of the fans that were generated in the audience participation when they came to watch me, they said, you know what, let's throw him in everything. And I mean everything. They threw me in pro wrestling, they threw me in commercials, they threw me in TV shows, they threw me in kickboxing, they threw me in they threw me in MMA, you name it, they did it. They even threw me in music. And everything that they threw me in, I hit #1. And that's what ended up allowing me to get the cover of Time magazine. That's the reason why I currently still hold the world record today for the most televised event ever in the history of MMA or kickboxing. That's with over 54 million watching. So if we were to take just that was when I did kickboxing against Akebono in 2006. That's over 54 million fans. When you've had Mike Tyson watch me come into the ring and kind of say he wants to fight the Beast, Bob Sapp, that has over 35 million fans. And then when you have The Longest Yard, that's the #1 movie in the world, that has well over 100 million fans. So I have well over 100 million fans strong, and I'm very grateful and very thankful for this.
Wow, that's really impressive, Bob. So you mentioned, the K1 and Pride, they decided to share you around, and obviously with such a popular figure in Japan and MMA worldwide, they wanted to use you as much as possible. But I just want to go back to the very start. How difficult was it for you? Obviously, MMA is such a tricky sport. Kickboxing, a very difficult sport in its own right. How difficult was it for you to pick up the skills needed to, compete in these sports? And was it difficult doing kickboxing and MMA at the same time for you?
The most difficulty I think that I had was the fact that I was to come to Japan for 5 days, and I ended up staying for 5 years. So when you're from the United States, I knew zero Japanese. I actually knew zero as to where the Japan was even located. I did this strictly for to receive revenue or to have a job, and so when I came to Japan, I knew nothing. So when you ask if it was very difficult, it's very difficult for me to even measure this because I had no experience in either. What I can tell you is that right off of the bat, well under 1 month of training time, I was fighting the world champions in kickboxing, which I defeated Ernesto Hoost twice. And then I also fought the world champion in mixed martial arts, which was at that time Antonio Nogueira. Yeah. So that was all well within, under 3 months, under a month or whatever it is. So I really, and then I had to learn, of course, a different culture. I had to adjust to new food. I was homesick, but that's okay because with my sushi, I had plenty of dessert.
I also wanted to ask you, you mentioned the fight against, Nogueira. Now, that slam that you used on Nogueira was it's pretty crazy. It's one of those things that will always be remembered in MMA. Just tell us a little bit about that fight and what it was like.
Okay, so, the only mixed martial arts that I had basically been taught at that time was professional wrestling. So when my coach at that time was Josh Barnett. I of course, was coached by Josh Barnett, Maurice Smith, Ivan Salivary, and these are just to name a few, Matt Hume. So these are just to name a few that are still greats or legends in mixed martial arts or kickboxing today. And so we had to come up with a game plan. So the first thing that we came up with was, hey, Bob, let's just, when he comes in, push down Antonio Nogueira's head and pick him up and powerbomb him. And, let's see if that will work. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure that's going to work because that's the only move that I'm able to do right now. So we kind of laughed and chuckled about it. We went out there, and when we went out there, we're talking about an outdoor stadium that had over 100,000 people packed, okay? To have you have some measuring point, UFC to this day still has yet to pack over 100,000 people. So the most I think UFC's ever had is 35,000 fans. Well, this event was packed so much that you even had people jumping out of a helicopter,
wow,
shooting in just to get their seats. So how funny is that? So that was something that was just an amazing time. And I ended up getting the fight of the night, and so did Nogueira. And he ended up winning, by the way. So our first round was 10 minutes. The second round was 5 minutes. I went 2 rounds, and with the world champion of MMA, and here I am with less than 5 months, 6 months, 3 months, whatever. It was a very short time, definitely under a year's time of experience. So what was this guy doing? And that just goes to show you what mixed martial arts and martial arts in general is all about. It is truly about self-defense. It truly is, when your time is called, get ready, get going. And I mean, and that's exactly what I did. And, it paid off for me. I ended up getting a slot machine deal very shortly afterwards. Of course, I've had well over 400 plus endorsement deals. But, it was just at that time a truly, truly remarkable and amazing situation.
And you know something, Bob? I think a lot of people don't realize it. You know, were versing, you know, the top guys in MMA, in kickboxing, and you know, you didn't have, you know, these days, you know, before a UFC fight, a guy would have a 3 month training camp specifically for one opponent. Back then, you were taking on the best of the best in K1, in Pride. I mean, I don't think people give you the credit that you deserve for being able to do that well with that little amount of training. But what I was going to say to you was, if you could go back, do you wish you had a little bit more time before to prepare before each fight? And how much of a difference do you think it would have made to your career in Japan?
You know, I say no, and I think it made zero difference. I enjoy everything that I was handed, and it was great, you know, and it still is great. One thing that I learned about in Japan is it's for you to have the heart and spirit of a champion, and that's more than just getting into the ring and ignoring all of your life responsibilities and saying, well, hey, I can just train all the time, and therefore I have to worry about nothing about my family, nothing about my future, nothing about my investments. Let me just run up a bunch of credit and debt and then turn around and be broke right afterwards. No, Japan has actually taught me to save money, to enjoy the things that I have here that are free in life, and then that's in turn shown me true freedom, which is why I live off of all my millions of dollars at the age of 40 while everybody goes to work. So I'm completely happy, and you know, my house is paid for, you know, I pay for everything in cash, and I sit back and relax and enjoy everything. And sometimes I will come down here. Do I go to work, which means to pay debt for a living? No, I actually just come here and simply enjoy or have a job. And so when I receive less money for a job, that's just called a profit margin. So I continually, and they of course have taught me, as well as some financial gurus in the United States, such as Dave Ramsey, they have actually taught me how to do sound investments and how to continually make revenue each and every day. So I completely enjoy everything. And this is true freedom and true peace.
You know, Bob, I'm happy for anyone who you know, can achieve that level and achieve that level of peace and happiness, just because, you know, in this economy, a lot of people are struggling, you know, so for the people that make it, you know, it's absolutely awesome. But obviously, you know, in Japan, you know, MMA is quite bleak, you know, Dream's gone, K1's gone, Pride is, you know, long gone, much to the dismay of fans. But tell us, what was it like dealing with Pride and K1, you know, behind the scenes and with promoters and things like that?
Well, it did get a bit sticky at times, you know. They, just like the majority of people, they unfortunately they're gone due to their kind of lack or their, I would say, they're lacking the ability to regulate themselves. They wanted to continue to go on. When you talk about people having problems, 99% of that is because they have no ability to regulate themselves. They borrow. They're either poor in their borrowing money by credit cards and debt, and they're rich in their borrowing money by credit cards and debt. So they're giving themselves no chance. Instead of just simply slowing down. Very often you've heard that Bob Sapp is a turtle. You know, he turtles up in the ring, or he's a turtle. That is exactly right. When you look at the race between the turtle and the hare, I walk slowly, I am protected all the time, and I continually go along bit by bit each year, which it makes me highly endangered species and one that is very old and very wise. So that is correct. The hare is the one that is out of breath, that has no stamina, that decides to hurry up and run along and do that. So what happens is you end up getting many fighters that hurry up and go. I just want to hurry up and just get to be the champion, and then I'm going to get all these millions of dollars, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to get all this debt, and I have no exactly how I'm going to get any kind of investment, but yet I'm going to have credit cards, and I'm ready to go. That's exactly what they do. So the ratio for borrowing money and all of this stuff is ridiculous. Instead of saying, you know what, it's too expensive, I can do without, let me keep going. I'll give you an example. I have, by the way, since 17 years old, I have never purchased nor went shopping. I've gotten all of my clothes have been provided, or I have gotten them used from everyone else, period. So I knew then to stop doing that stuff, because I was taught at a very young age. Now, my only resume that I've had for a job has been when I was 16 years old. That was at Kentucky Fried Chicken. So everything else since the age of 21, I have made $1 million or more in every job. I'm now 40 years old. So as you look through on and you read some things about maybe the Beast online, you can read some negative things. I'm the only fighter that's made world history in the cover of Time magazine and done #1 in everything that I've touched. So that can be a little trick. So you've got to say, wait a second, this guy has been in the NFL, pro wrestling, movies, commercials, has every endorsements, and has millions of dollars, and retired at 40, and you guys are calling him a loser. Okay, let's leave that kind of poison alone. So, but then again, you should always avoid loans, right?
Very, very funny, Bob. Great stuff. You know, we did reach out to some of the fans. We got a couple of fan questions in the interview, and you know, I don't think a lot of them are calling you a loser. I think a lot of people do think that, you know, they're very thankful for the entertainment that you've put in, the moment you've created for them. So I think it's more, you know, you do have a lot of great MMA fans out there. But what I was going to ask you is, obviously, near the end of your career, you said you've retired. You've had some difficult losses. Was that one of the reasons why you decided to retire from MMA and kickboxing? And what do you attribute to the kind of change in the losses near the end of your career?
Towards the end of my career, what ended up happening is I had some large medical bills at that time for being a professional fighter. Our medical bills, we had to get carried by ourselves, which means that we were unable to get medical insurance, so we had to pay everything in cash. So if you get a gash on your eye, that's going to cost you roughly about $7,000 US. So if so if you're doing something like if you of course have to pay for your trainer and you want to pay for your manager, and then of course just your normal living expenses, if you're fighting for about $40,000 after taxes, you're looking about $31,000 is what you're going to have. Now, if you're paying your trainer and your manager 10%, and then you've got to do another $7,000 for a bill just for your fighting, that can really, really put you in the hole. Now, towards the end of my career, I had to make a decision. Should I, number one, help others, which means should I have given some of my money to the fighters that came before me and pay some of their medical bills for some of them that had brain damage? Same thing with some of the pro wrestlers. Should I then give back? Should I also give back to my fans? Should I allow them to come to some of my fighting events? Should I then go around the world and make sure that I can, of course, collect revenue, and that I, of course, can share my revenue with all of the fans before I do end? And that's exactly what I did. As far as what retired me, it's very simple. I have what's called accountability. I have the ability to do my own accounting. And when you have well over $10 million, there is no longer a need to step into the ring anymore. So when you're able to do that and follow the great steps of gurus, financial gurus such as in the United States, such as Dave Ramsey, when you're able to put that all together with the wisdom and the truth that you've encountered through your travels, one of which, of course, is Japan. When you combine the two, that gives you something extreme, and, well, let's just say that gives you profitability. So now I have the ability to strictly make a profit, and when it's a little bit beneath, we just simply call that profit margin. So I no longer do I have a need to go into the ring for $40,000 for a fight when I'm making, well, last month that was somewhere in that realm of over $1 million. So I don't have the need to do that any longer.
Wow, you need to share that sweet Bob Sapp money around with us. But I was gonna say, Bob, yeah, that's a great point there. Just to follow up on that question, if you didn't have to pay off those some of those bills and bring in that revenue, obviously, and we appreciate you coming down to Australia. You fought in Sydney, and I didn't get a chance to see you personally, which is a shame because we're in Victoria. But it was just great having you in the country. But and hopefully you do come back, but just to hang out with us. But I was gonna ask you, if you didn't have that stuff to pay off, when do you reckon you would have retired from the sport?
Oh, wow, that's a great question, and I think that if I never had any of those things, I would probably be just like any other fighter. I would just keep going and going and going, and then you would see me, my face would look like you would start to get that droopiness, kind of puppy dog look. I would start to have some slurred speech. I would start to, well, I just want to get a fight, and I would have no point, I mean, it's crazy. It's like from my point of view and from what I was taught, from what I can see, it's like everybody's running to go to some finish line that they have no idea when they will finish. So I just decided to, as everybody decided to run off of this cliff, I just simply stopped. And as I see everybody running, I'm saying, what are you guys running to besides jumping off the cliff? Nobody's able to tell you. I mean, once you have your house and you have your things, I do have a movie theater and a big screen television and all of these and 6 dogs and 4 cats. Once you're able to have all of these things that are paid for, and they, of course, you have no debt. What is your overall end game? I mean, if you simply stop and you do your sound investments, your money continually makes money for you, and you already have everything that you need. You're still going to eat, so that's fine. So what am I going to do? Like smash my computer and go off and buy another computer next week? I mean, because it just happens to have high resolution? I think no. So in order for me to buy new technology, I actually have to see and feel a difference. So all of these things are simply one thing that I've been asked, of course, to teach, and of course to manage some fighters, and of course to manage some companies, and to do so with the teachings that I've learned throughout the years. I do some of that now. However, it's quite funny for me because I see just people that just continually go, but they have no end game. That's one of the problems that you see in fighting. They just simply jump in the ring and they have no end game. I used to be really kind of vocal about saying fighters should get more money and do all of these things, and Dana White should pay more money. Dana White, of course, is the #1 promoter for UFC, and I used to think, maybe he should pay more money. I am now starting to rethink this by saying, a lot of these fighters are just a little bit lazy. They want to just go into the ring and get millions of dollars instead of saving their money, instead of course, taking care of their self for after the ring. They just are going in there for short-term profit instead of long-term gains. So, when you get people that go in there for that, or when they go in there for ego instead of the paycheck, you end up getting yourself in big problems. So they really need to define what they would like to do with their lives, and when, in fact, do they want to stop, and how would they like to stop? So I stopped. I am popular for being very famous fighter, of course, for winning towards the beginning, all the champions. And then, of course, I'm popular for losing all at the end. Well, the overall end game for me was, of course, money, and of course to gather revenue for my future, and of course to allow me to relax like I'm doing now. And that's exactly what happened. I made money at the beginning, I made money at the end, and now I'm making money all the time. So that was what my overall goal was, and I, of course, did that, and did so in with wonderful fans and wonderful people, and and even some wonderful foods. And I learned other languages, and I've even I've got my college degrees. So all of these things are something for most people to learn from if they in fact would like to aspire to what we would call success. Success being the measure of improvement. The measure of improvement for business is, of course, money. So if you would like to be able to retire at a young age, and to do what you like and to do what you like at any time, and to have your money go out there and get punched and beaten up for you, and wake up at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning, then I am somebody that you should, of course, learn from and watch.
And I think you're in the very small percentile of MMA fighters that do actually end their career with all those things, because a lot of them do end up with far less. And when you talked about injuries and the slurred speech and things like that, I can't help of one of your past opponents we spoke to him about before, and that's Antonio Nogueira. Now, he's an absolute legend of the sport, and fans absolutely love him, much like yourself. But he's had a lot of fights, and he's had some tough losses recently, and the guy has so much mileage. What are your thoughts on Nogueira and in terms of his career?
Well, I think, he's a tough guy, and I think I think he needs to slow down. I think he needs to stop. There, like I said, there does need to be an overall game plan. And so now you've gotten yourself to create a bad habit. So before he's getting in there for the strictly fighting thrill, and of course excuse me, and of course to make money. And now all of a sudden it's changed to, let me just do it for ego, and no matter what, as I get older and I damage my body, I will just make sure that I'm in there. Well, that's quite silly. Much like getting a brand new car, getting insurance, slamming it into the wall, and then just going back again, getting more insurance, paying even more for it, slamming it in the wall again. You've got to learn how to stop. And you have to ask, why am I doing this? When should I stop? And then that, of course, will allow you to have that success or the measure of improvement. Now, no longer is measuring the improvement. He's actually measuring damage. And so when people are talking about him, no longer are they talking about Nogueira is very successful. They're saying, man, look how beaten up this guy is. He has to stop. And you know what? We're all going to stop sometime, right? We all will either die. Well, everyone dies, right? Or we all will get beaten up so much in this sport by age that we will be forced to stop. So what is the overall end game? What is your end game? If he's beaten up too much and he's unable to enjoy his family or his life, well, then that's kind of silly. That's been wasted. So let's stop from wasting life. Let's stop from wasting money. Let's enjoy what we have, and then just completely stop. So we have to learn the term contentment. We have to learn to really be happy and enjoy with what we have. And it's really unfortunate because you get a lot of fighters that just keep going and they have no idea what they're going for. A lot of people ask me, well, Bob, you have all this money and you're never really spending it. Well, so what? I have no need to spend it when I have everything that I want right now. So when the time comes, I will know when it's time for me to spend more revenue. When it's time for me to, buy somebody a home here because it's been wrecked by an earthquake, or a family that's in trouble, or a fighter that's really having some really tough times and he really wanted to do everything the right way. I will know, and it will be told to me, and it's okay. I have other wrestlers that are kind of like the secret guardians, and they'll come over here and they'll whisper to me that, hey, come help this wrestler out. I'll have lawyers that will come and say, hey, help this individual out. So I know what it is that I'm doing, and I'm blessed enough to where I can do that. So, if you're looking at, I live well underneath my means, and well under, I'm at roughly $25,000 or $30,000 a year I can live off of, and that's by traveling even first class. So, if I can do that, come on, guys, what are you guys doing over here? You guys are, and guess what? I only have my house. So do I have a gym and an MMA company and an MMA movie shop and thousands of T-shirts and all of that? No, I just have my investments and my house, which is all paid for, and I have everything else that's provided. So that is true freedom. I have no need to have a headache and have a gym, nor do I know exactly. Come on, we've seen the Beast fight. I have no idea if I can actually teach that.
Well, in terms of money, there's definitely a lot you could teach us, and probably a lot of MMA fighters in general.
Yeah, you're blowing our minds. But you mentioned this before, and we're going to get to the fan questions in a second, but you mentioned this before. Obviously, the UFC pay. A lot of people are criticizing the UFC for the low amounts of money they're paying their fighters. And now the news that have come out is that the UFC are going to be bringing uniforms, which might limit some fighters in getting sponsorship money before their fights. As an outside party, and obviously someone who knows so much about, finance and saving up and the money that fighters make. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that the UFC, do you think that this is the right thing the UFC are doing?
No, I think that here's the thing. The fighters actually need to understand what a sponsor's job is and what their job is for a sponsor. Let me give you an example. I'm here in Japan. One of my sponsors, or what I would say my advertisers or partners, what we do, he owns kind of like a QVC or a shopping channel, a Japan shopping channel. Okay. My job is to go down and to make that place awesome and to make it sing. So what I do when I do any training on the day? Maybe I'll do it at 5 in the morning. But after that, I'm on a train or an airplane for several hours. Then I will go down there. I will put on their shopping channel t-shirt, and I will walk everyone around the store and show them items for them to sell or for them to purchase. That is what I will do. I will do that for 6 or 7 hours, and I will do that with enjoyment, with a smile on my face. He'll give me some food, we'll crack some jokes, and we will sit around there for hours and hours and hours as I show everyone around, show everybody around doing everything. Now, that is what my job and what my responsibility is. A lot of these fighters and a lot of people think, well, I'm just going to get a sponsor, and because I punched somebody in the face, then I'm going to get millions of dollars and I'm going to wear a shirt. No, in turn, they are now teaching me. He's teaching me business. When I'm telling you about how I've learned some of the financial gurus and some of the ways of Japan, this is what this guy is doing. He is teaching me. Consider that to be an internship. When you have UFC step in the middle of a advertiser, or what you'd like to say a sponsor, no longer are you able to have that one-on-one communication. That one-on-one communication is now with the UFC and is no longer with the fighter, and that fighter no longer can learn from anyone. So now that fighter is just walking he's just training, and then he's going out and saying, well, after fighting, maybe I'll meet somebody that will teach me business. No, you've blown all your business teaching at that time. Or what the fighters are doing, are they wanting to learn business? No, they're busy saying, I've got to get up and train. They're blowing their opportunity for their families. They're blowing their opportunities for retirement. They're blowing their opportunities just to get into that gym and say, look at my biceps. I can do an arm bar on somebody. Look how cool that is. So what? So what? Now you're broke, and you're broke two ways, right? You're broke with no money. You're broke by non-working. That means non-functionable. If your toy is broke, that means it's non-working. So no longer are they working. No longer are they functionable. They are simply in their existing. You have to be a human being. You have to be a human doer instead of a human being. You have to actually do something. And so you've got to get up and do something. And that doing something actually requires you to do work. Stop asking and begging for somebody to come, give me a sponsor. No, it's an advertiser. Let's work together and let's do that. I know this very, very well because I've done well over 73 plus commercials. I have well over 400 plus endorsements. And that happens to be well beyond any fighter's capability to even think that they can do that. And I've done so in different countries, in different languages, even when my native speaking language happens to be English. So if I can do that all around the world, they can do it all around the world. The difference is they are just lazy. They want to walk into that gym and show everybody, hey, look, I can beat somebody up, and do only that. That's far from what it requires. We require you to be a good citizen. That means you have to do multiple things, and you have to do so very well. And to be a good citizen, you have to do hard work. Let's stop using all this debt and credit and stop doing all of these things. Let's take time. Let's be a turtle instead of being the hare. And you know what? And let's stop, stop splitting hairs by saying, this fighter here, he's got to get all this debt. He's got to just get sponsors. All he has to do is train. Come on, let's really think about it. There's 7 billion people in this planet, at least according to the Census Bureau of 2013. So if you really think you're number one in the world, unless you've beaten the beast with the attendance record, Then are you number one? No. So let's go ahead and drop all of that ego and let's think about, let's follow the leader. Let's follow the leader in what he's doing. And, you know, you can look at my face. You can look at my ears. I have no cauliflower ears. I have just a few scars on my face. Other than that, that's it. Well, hey, let me go ahead and let me back that up. A couple girls say I really do look like a beast, so maybe I have a whole scar on my whole face. But trust me, I was born that way.
Now, Bob, we also wanted to ask you a few of your fan questions. You know, we open up the gates and let the fans ask some questions. One of them is, let's see, Enox wanted to ask, you know, let's talk Yakuza in Pride. Everyone has heard those rumors. There's a lot of Yakuza in Pride. Is there any truth to that? And, you know, do you remember any stories from you know, dealing with Yakuza?
I only know of some of which everyone has heard from the newspaper or from the public media. Now, it's so let me give you an example as to possibly why that is. When I'm coming from the United States, I'm coming to Japan. That's a completely foreign country to me. They're speaking a completely different language. It's far from like somebody walks up to you and says, "Hey, I'm an illegal gangster and I'm in some criminal activity. So therefore, here, shake my hand and here's millions of dollars. And by the way, smuggle some white powder on and really it's powdered sugar instead of it being cocaine." No. That's far from what happens. So nobody's coming up to me and admitting to anything, and nor would they, and nor would I really actually know what the heck they're talking about. So, you know, do I know anything about that? No. Will I do? Are there crooked promoters? Absolutely. There's crooked promoters, there's crooked fighters, and let's remember, a lot of the fighters are in fighting because they have the lack or the inability to communicate. They're using violence as a form of solving their problems, and they just happen to be rewarded for that. Now, if you do it to an extreme level, they just throw your butt in prison. Okay, so a lot of these guys, some of these fighters actually have prison records, and and you know, and when you start getting this guy really beat this guy up. Look how bad he destroyed him. Look at this this injury he did to this fighter. Some of the fighters who are respected are going in there to win. Are they going in there to hurt, to maim? No, they're just going in there for the win. And, you know, some of these fans, they can just actually, they kind of take it to an extreme level. And they take it to a level to where they've taken it out. They've taken actually the sport of the combat, what I would say the combat entertainment. They've taken it from that, and they've decided to actually make it more like a sport of killing or maiming. No, guys, that would be prison, or go out there and see anybody doing that. There's no referee needed for that. So a lot of this is what's perpetuated by the media or perpetuated by people who have no idea.
Great point there, Bob. Now, Norwegian would like to know, are you going to have any more appearances? And I'm going to butcher saying this, but, you know, feel free to correct me. I think it's called Battle for the Money, Sentorchu, or Torsochu, Run for the Money. He says those shows are always great entertainment.
Okay, so what he's talking about is can be that one of those. I think it's Sentochu. That's consider that like a large game of what is it, handball. So that's when you take a ball and you throw a ball, and we do that in a ghost city. And we all have a soft like Nerf ball. We throw it at the other opponent as fast as we can, and if we tag them, then that person's out. We use a series of clues, and we also use a series of like we talk by cell phones, and there's teamwork, and there's all these type of fun games in there. Now the Tosochu, that's with guys that are dressed like the Men in Black. And they run at you, and you've got to hide. So that's like a game of tag, so to speak. Will I be doing stuff like that in the future? Yes. I actually have a New Balance. So your shoes, your New Balance shoes, that's called now Run Ovation. I will be doing that tomorrow. I will be playing a game of tag with well over 2,000 people. So wow. That's with your New Balance event. So I'm now with the New Balance shoe contract, so to speak. And I also, of course, they teamed up with a lot of some automobile company, and I think that company is Toyota. So I'll be out there doing that tomorrow. So I'll be up at 5 a.m. in the morning,
Wow.
and we will be getting that done. And I will be doing that until roughly, I think my day ends at midnight. I just shot a comedy show with their comedian Bobby Ogden yesterday that will air on Japanese television as well. So I continually will do these things, of course. And Hollywood movies still going on. I've got to come back and shoot. It looks like I've got some more movie offers. And if I decide to take some, I declined a Hollywood movie offer last month. And simply because I wanted to walk my dogs and play around a little bit, and I want to enjoy my 3D movie theater in my house that I put in there. So I turned down a Hollywood movie. So now I played a couple of games a little bit. I had to play Infamous 2 on PlayStation 4. So
nice.
Such a good game.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I turned down a Hollywood movie just to do that. And guess what? When you save all your cash, you get to do that. So it's no problem. So I love it.
Awesome. Well, look, you sound like a busy guy. We'll get through this, what we call the submission radio tap out round. Basically,
Yes.
what we'll do is we'll ask you a whole bunch of questions. It's kind of similar to word association. It's kind of like the bullet round. And you answer those. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
When will we see Shaq versus Bob Sapp fight?
Oh, well, only in a video game. But I think that may never happen unless, of course, you're a promoter. So call him up, Tank. Give him a call. Roll him down.
Yeah, that's trying to be a good arm wrestling as well. I think. How close did you get to fighting Tyson, and how badly do you wish that the fight actually came together?
Oh, man, I really wanted to get in there badly, so that would be 100% of everything. I really wish it would have came through. If looking back on it in the past, I would have stayed in Las Vegas had I known he would be or he would kind of have some problems that he had entering into the country of Japan just to do the fight. So that's what ended up stopping that. At least that's what I was told. So I would have stayed in Las Vegas or the United States because I think Mike Tyson and myself really would have put on a true entertaining fight. And you know what, Mike Tyson, I would have knocked you out.
Another question. Did you teach Adam Sandler any moves when shooting the longest yard with him?
No, but he sure did teach me some moves because he was going back and forth on the set with a scooter. So I was watching him, and right afterwards, I briefly, I got a scooter. I briefly was on the scooter. The scooter then, of course, broke, and so did my dreams of riding a push pedal scooter.
What are your thoughts on what's the one thing that can bring MMA back to popularity in Japan?
To allow non-greed. Non-greed will bring MMA back to the popularity level that it has in Japan, and let's just see if in fact some of these the people here will let go. Some of that will drop the ego and simply pick up the paycheck. Well, you got to be a turtle to do that.
Bob, if you could have one rematch, who would you choose?
Ooh, Antonio Nogueira. That would be the best rematch, and I think with both of us, with me, of course, now with my expertise level, I think now I could come at him. Of course, I'm talking about a one that is a well. How should I say this? His body would be well in condition. So a non-injured, really ready to go Antonio Nogueira. I would really, really love to do that rematch.
Now, of all the UFC heavyweights currently, who's the way that if you could go back to the Pride days, you could find you reckon you'd make a very interesting fight with?
Of all the current, I've never really watched fighting anymore. So I think the last fight I saw for UFC was somebody, is his name Diego or something like this? He's like and there was two heavyweight fighters. And So I'm sorry. It's, I know I stopped playing sport video games and fighting long ago. So because I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, got the video game, did that. So I'm very sorry, but I will just say, anybody gets into the ring, the Beast is going to make it entertaining because that's my job.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, Brock Lesnar, if he was still fighting, would have been an amazing fight.
Yeah, you know what? I think so. Yeah, Brock Lesnar, that would have been awesome. And I'm a fan of Kimbo Slice, so I would have loved to come on there and to kind of ham it up with him. So yeah, that's awesome.
Here's one for you, Bob. Finish this sentence. People don't know that I
have college degrees and I'm bilingual, and actually that I have no injuries.
When you say bilingual, what are the languages?
I speak Japanese and I speak some Korean, and I'm now currently, while I'm studying more Japanese, of course, to speak it more fluently. And that's pretty much what I would say most people have no idea of. And most people have no idea that I have no debt of any kind as well, and that I pay everything in cash. So a lot of people assume that I live off of credit or credit cards, but nope. All I do is have just my house and nothing else other than that.
Now, Bob, do you think that performance-enhancing drugs are a problem in MMA right now?
The answer to that, I would say no. And the reason why is because everyone wants to say something to enhance performance. The only thing that's going to enhance your performance is training and to have a plan. A lot of these things tell you that they're enhancing performance, but then again, you look at these fighters, they're beat, they're broke, and so obviously nothing has been enhanced. Okay, if anything, it's hurt them. It's been a hindrance. And if anything's phony that anyone's picked up, it would be that credit, because credit is far from the same as cash. So if you want to talk about something being phony, drop the credit cards, drop getting this loan, borrowing money, drop all of that stuff, and let's do real. That's right. Stick to real cash. If you look at a U.S. dollar bill or U.S. cash, that currency says to pay all debts, legal and tender. It's far from you breaking the contract of that money and saying, let's get more debt, let's get more credit cards. So let's start by reading a basic contract that you accept from cash. So let's do something. Let's keep it real, okay, guys. And you know what? Actually, I do have I do date a few women, and they have breast augmentation, and it is fine with me. So I'm okay with it. That's enhancements.
And last question in this epic interview. After this is all said and done, what do you want people to remember Bob Sapp for?
I want people to remember Bob Sapp for being a philanthropist, and of course for having a really big mouth and a big laugh.
Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. We feel very enlightened after we spoke to you, and you're certainly welcome anytime. Any last messages for the Australian fans?
Well, the Beast will be coming. Actually, I have a Australian documentary crew that is following me, so I have to give a big shout out to how do we say his name is Lewis? How do you say his name? Lewis. That's I think that's all we know him by his first name. Lewis. But there is an Australian documentary that's following me around here. Lewis and what? David and Lewis, and their cameraman, and I forget his name right now, but that's okay. So anyway, there will be a documentary crew that you'll see, a documentary for the Beast that's from Australia that's following me around, and I actually have other documentaries that's now following me around, and they're saying, just how did the Beast do this? How did this guy become a multi-millionaire by the age of 40 and retire, doing only entertainment in every aspect where everybody says you're only one in a million? Well, that's okay, because I've decided to make it 1,000,000 to 1. $1 million to every $1. You gotta love it.
Awesome, guys. And you can follow Bob on @BobSapp MMA. Keep an eye on him, and obviously very excited for this documentary. Thank you, Bob, and guys. We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to Bob the Beast Sapp, and that's on Submission Radio. I'm not going to tap this time. Don't call me Tap the Sapp.
So there you have it, guys. The man, the beast, Bob Sapp himself. What an interesting guy. Actually, you know what? I really sort of learnt a new side of Bob Sapp after that interview. I didn't realize the guy was so rich. I didn't realize he lived that comfortably, in Japan, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and let's not beat around the bush. A lot of fans had a chat with us. A lot of them sent in questions, and there's an idea of Bob in the sport. That he was throwing fights on purpose, that he was only in the sport for entertainment. A lot of controversy around him, and I think we cleared up a lot of that controversy in that interview. We addressed a lot of the questions that the fans wanted to know, and Bob was a really great guy for opening up to us and actually being honest about a lot of these things, whereas a lot of other people might have just not answered those questions or just hung up the phone. So we really do appreciate Bob for stopping on the show and for being so honest with us about every aspect of his career. And what an interview, over an hour. I think it's one of the longest interviews that we've done, and it's certainly been one of the funnest ones we've had as well.
Yeah, and Bob was an absolute gentleman, so definitely much appreciated for that. But I think it's that time where we're pretty much coming up to the end of the episode. It's time to put a bow on this one.
That's right. We'll put it to sleep. Before we do, guys, our Stitcher, our TuneIn, and our iTunes, the episode is available on through all those mediums. So make sure you check it out. Our Twitter is SubmissionAUS. Add us, follow us, and check out who the next guests will be on next week's show and cast. We have some great content coming, don't we?
Yeah, that's right, guys. For anyone who's a fan of the EA UFC game, or for anyone who's just been living under a rock and doesn't know, obviously the UFC is bringing out their official game on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and all the beautiful graphics that go along with next-gen consoles. And fans have been absolutely dying and clamoring for news on this game, and we're going to give it to you. So we've got the roster reveal coming up on our channel. That's coming up this week. We've got an interview with assistant producer Jazz Bruzo. That's coming up this week. And yeah, there'll be some sexy video of Dennis and myself playing the game.
Yeah, that's right, guys. And as Casper said, so we'll have the interview with the assistant producer. We'll have the roster reveal. Then after you watch those videos, you'll get an opportunity to do a Q&A with Submission Radio. That's where you put down your questions in the comment section below those videos. And me and Cass will actually do a Q&A with you. Now, we know a lot about the game. We played it for over an hour. We know a lot, pretty much, most of the details about the game. So don't be shy. Ask us your questions. We'll be happy to do this Q&A and have a chat to you in audio, and really let you know what to expect from the game.
There you go, guys. But I think once again, it is that time to end this show. Another episode, another one in the bag, another win for the bad guys. Till then, we'll see you next week.